You're good to go, Bill.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm so pleased to welcome everyone here tonight to our Zoom community information meeting to learn more about community choice aggregation, or CCA, here in Brighton. I'm Bill Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, and I want to thank Jewel Community Power and Roctricity for working with the town of Brighton on this innovative wholesale energy purchase program. You'll be hearing more from them later, but thanks to buying in bulk through our CCA program, known as Monroe Community Power, Brighton residents and small businesses will soon be able to use 100% renewable source energy at a price that's cheaper than RG&E's current pricing for non-renewable electricity. Our low CCA price will also be fixed for 2 years, unlike RG&E's pricing that varies and could go even higher. Tonight you'll hear Glenn Weinberg from Jewel and Sue Hughes-Smith from Roctricity, a local company that is an outgrowth of the Rochester People's Climate Coalition, talking more about CCA and answering questions that you may have. Now, there'll be several more opportunities to learn more about our CCA program before it goes into effect in January. But I think you'll find this to be a very exciting program that will not only save us all money, but also advance our shared commitment to make Brighton a more sustainable community. Brighton's also committed to be an inclusive community. And for that reason, tonight, as we do at all of our Brighton Town Board meetings, this Zoom meeting is being interpreted in ASL sign language by our interpreter, Allie Putney. Thank you, Allie. Now I'm going to turn the program over to Glenn Weinberg from Jewel Community Power. Glenn?
Thanks, Supervisor Maley, and thanks for inviting me here, and thanks to you, Bill, and to you, Roctricity, for organizing this event and getting the word out. And I'm very pleased to be here. As Bill mentioned, I'm Glenn Weinberg from Jewel Community Power. We're the program administrator for the Monroe Community Power program. So we run the technical component of this process, including the procurement of energy, which we just got through, that phase just completed. And we're really pleased. So we're sort of the behind the scenes, in many ways, we're sort of the behind the scenes manager of the program. But we're so pleased to be partnered with Roctricity, which, as Bill mentioned, is a locally dedicated company to public outreach and education around clean energy and other climate action programs, but especially this new CCA program, which will impact the source of your energy, your default energy, and also the price. And Sue will tell you a whole lot more about that, as well as, of course, your options to participate or not participate. But again, we're just so pleased to be partnered with Roctricity as such a dedicated local force of public awareness and promotion of clean energy issues. We also want to just give a big kudos to and a big congratulations to Supervisor Maley and the town board for showing leadership on this program. I can say with certainty that had it not been for that leadership, we would not be in the position that we are today, which is an extraordinary position to be able to announce the success in the procurement process, that we were able to secure as Bill also mentioned, a really low price for 100% New York State renewable energy, which will now be as a resident of the town of Brighton, it will now be your default electricity supply, which is just really cool. And it's something that you can be proud of, and the whole town can be proud of and can pat themselves on the back for having accomplished, because very few communities can say the same. You may have heard about this program already. We've been doing outreach in Brighton and surrounding communities for quite a while, and you're likely to recognize Sue and the Roctricity team, and also probably have heard it from Supervisor Maley and from the town board in various venues and meetings and promotions. But today is essentially really the kickoff of the outreach period in earnest. This is really when the program really takes off. We're heading now towards launch, as Sue will tell you about the timeline and what you might be able to expect in terms of seeing a letter in your mailbox and hearing more about the program. So you may have heard about it already. You're very likely to hear about it more after tonight. But this is an exciting moment because tonight is really, again, the kickoff of that big push to make sure that as many folks in town have heard about the program, they know their options, they understand the benefits as well as the other considerations of this program, and that's really what, of course, what our primary goal is tonight. So please feel free to ask questions, to feedback on what you're hearing, to let us know what you think, and we look forward to hearing from you. So with that, I'll pass the baton over to Sue Hughes-Smith, who will be running the show here on the presentation, and I look forward to talking to some of you after the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you very much, Bill, for your opening remarks, and to echo Glenn for your leadership on this initiative. So just quickly, most people by now are probably familiar with Zoom, but your microphone and camera will be off. Please use the Q&A feature to ask us questions, and we'll come back to that again towards the end, which is when we'll probably take the questions. There we go. All right, so Monroe Community Power, that's the name, overall name for the program that Brighton is participating in. And really, huge thanks to Brighton for their leadership, because although there are several members of Monroe Community Power, only Brighton is moving forward at this time with implementing a community choice aggregation program. And you can see as well at the bottom here, the logo for Roctricity and of course, Jewel, both who have been introduced to you this evening. So Brighton is going to launch a 100% renewable community choice aggregation program on January 1st of 2021. And that program is really focused on the use of hydropower. I know that's important to many people here in Brighton, so I want to highlight that. And it is really a wonderful price and an excellent product. If you want to keep up with us or ask us any questions, the Monroe Community Power website is a great resource to you. You can see the URL here. So this evening, I will just briefly touch on what community choice aggregation is, in case that is unfamiliar to you, the benefits, the specific contract details, the question, will it affect you, and what will your bill look like, and then the next steps. So community choice aggregation, often abbreviated CCA, is an energy purchase program. So the New York State Public Service Commission first authorized it in April 2016 after studying the pilot program that was taking place in Westchester County. So this allows municipalities, your villages, towns, and cities to aggregate the energy demand and then negotiate the bulk purchase for electricity. So that allows us to determine the rate for the default supply for the community. And it's simply moving that default selection from the state telling the utility to take an action, if you don't as an individual, to now the locality is making that decision. And obviously this enables the municipality to really have a investment in meeting their sustainability goals. And I'm a proud Brighton resident, particularly because Brighton is so concerned with doing our part to meet sustainability goals. So all energy customers are eligible to participate in this program, but some are automatically included. And that term is called opt-out treatment. So lots of people are automatically in unless they take an action to leave. But if you're a very large energy consumer, you could still participate, but you would need to take an action to join. Most entities that are opt-in eligible usually have the ability to negotiate their own price. So really the Public Service Commission was providing to the community what was already available to very large energy users. So the benefits of community choice aggregation. So the market varies, as we all probably know, and RG&E and other utilities have to be restricted in their ruling to give us that market price from month to month. So their rate varies. We think it's an advantage for residents and small businesses to eliminate that variability, to have a fixed rate, and through aggregation to negotiate that fixed rate be lower than a predetermined benchmark. So the goal is to leverage bulk buying through aggregation to create savings for residents and small businesses, eliminate the volatility, and enable the local selection of the default supplier. And in this way, communities that want to prioritize renewable energy, communities like Brighton, can help accelerate the transition to renewable energy. So the specific contract details for Brighton. The winning bidder is a company called Source Power, and our contract will last for 24 months. We hope that then we will go through the process again 2 years from now and get another great product. But this particular contract is good for 24 months. It's 100% renewable, and the rate is 4.292 cents per kilowatt hour, here displayed as the dollar value of 0.04. And this, I just want to point out to you, if you looked up RG&E's rate today, for this month, it's 4.6 cents. So we're already have negotiated a price that's lower than where RG&E is today. And another important thing to consider is that if you or I, as an individual, wanted to buy this same exact product, a 24-month, 100% renewable product that costs you nothing if you choose to leave the program, you would find online the cheapest is 6.1 cents. So this is delivering through the power of aggregation, through Brighton's leadership, you are able to get a 25% savings compared to what you and I as an individual have available to us. So this is really exciting, and the source of our power is going to be purchased from 100% hydropower. And these facilities are located within New York State or supply directly to New York State, one of the two. So will the CCA affect you? Most customers are enrolled in the opt-out basis. So if you are a resident or small business, you are likely going to be automatically included. However, if you have already contracted with a third-party supplier, sometimes called an ESCO, then you would not be automatically included. You would want to take a look at your utility bill. You would know if there's a special extra name there for the source of your energy. And then you might want to look at the terms of that contract and determine if you want to leave that contract and join the CCA program. But you won't automatically be included. Other customers that are not automatically included, of course, are those very large energy users that are on a demand meter, or any customer that's chosen to have a freeze or a block placed on their account. And for a handful of folks who may also be taking advantage of the Home Energy Assistance Program, HEAP recipients are not automatically included. And that's simply because of the terms and conditions placed on the HEAP program by the Public Service Commission. So those folks cannot automatically join this program. Everyone else will be automatically included unless you take an action to opt out. So will your electric bill look different? Yeah, it will. It will look a little different. You'll no longer see, and I'm going to show you a picture of this in just a second. So there, number one, your electric bill has two main components, a supply and a delivery portion. And if RG&E is making the default purchases, then the supply services is in that section of the bill right along with RG&E's delivery charges. So that will change when the CCA goes into effect. Now the supply will be from source power, and those charges will be detailed towards the end of the bill. So just to give you a visual for that, right? So again, RG&E takes care of all of our wires. They take care of the grid infrastructure, and their role is not going to change. They also will continue to send you your bill. So all of those delivery charges will remain the same. And that's what RG&E is keeping for their part of the work. The electric supply charges, and again here, this bill is showing you the example of if you are not in a CCA, where you have the delivery charges followed by the supply charges. That's the piece that's going to change. So with the Community Choice Aggregation Program in effect, those charges are first going to show up on the very beginning of your bill under the consolidated account summary, and we'll see the name Source Power, and their charges will be detailed. Further into your bill, you'll notice that the RG&E section just has the electric delivery charges. The supply is no longer there, but is instead a little further into your bill. And again, the name Source Power will appear. So the next steps, after this meeting, we will finalize a letter that will be coming from Bill. It'll be on municipal letterhead. It will be signed by Bill Maley. And in there, it will have a couple of things. Number one, it will show you the next date of our information session. It'll be the same, pretty much the same presentation, but you can attend it as many times as you want. You also will have a card if you don't want to participate for some reason. Maybe you really like the ESCO you already belong to. Then you might want to fill out that card and simply put it in the mail. And then you will never be joined into the program unless you just change your mind later. And then the cost details, all the information that I just reviewed will also be in that letter. Okay. That should arrive in your mailbox in November. Within the first 2 weeks of November, we'll then be having more information sessions. And on January 1st, the supply purchasing will change to Source Power. You will really see that on the bill, of course, that begins to arrive in February because of just the lag, right? Okay, so I'm happy to take questions. See, is it best for me to stop screen sharing or just to leave this up? Ben, do you want to read the questions?
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions. Let's see. First, it says, I'm thinking that Source Power from Texas has never been an ESCO selected by a CCA. How will we know they are aware of the more expensive RECs in New York State and buy the correct number of RECs to cover the customer usage? That might be a Glenn question.
That sounds like a great Glenn question. Maybe I will stop screen sharing so you can see Glenn.
There he is.
There you go.
Yeah, so this is, there are, the name is Source Power is, I guess, somewhat common in the industry. This Source Power is located in New York. So they're not the same company that's located in Texas, but you're right to, this is a New York company, but you're right to assume that this is their first time serving a CCA in New York. In fact, there's only been a couple of companies so far that have served CCAs in New York. So we're actually very pleased that there are new. We got several more bids, in fact, to this RFP than we've gotten in previous CCA RFPs. There's increased interest amongst the ESCOs in New York, Source Power being one of them, and we were pleased to see that. But your question is a really good one, and it was an extremely salient concern of ours, something that we talked an awful lot about with Source, and I can imagine that some of the acronyms and terminology that's used in that question might confuse some other attendees, so I'll try to unpack it a little bit. Essentially, what they're asking about here is the sourcing of renewables inside New York State, which is a market and a grid, a power grid unto itself, within which there has been some significant price volatility around buying renewables in New York State. So it's an excellent question, and it's something that we really discussed at great length with Source before making the recommendation to Supervisor Maley to award the contract to Source, specifically where they were sourcing their renewables, how they were doing it, how they could ensure they would have the volume. So all the same questions that you're asking. We got very deep into their methodology and their contract structure, and how they were, again, how they were planning to source all of those renewables. And they were very transparent with us, and they showed us with great detail just how they intended to do so, which satisfied us. What we'll see is that they will use a variety of methods due to the fact that renewables are in high demand in New York. They'll use a variety of methods to source, and they have given us reasonable assurance that the price that they've quoted is the price that they ultimately will pay. So we have a pretty good transparent look at again, the how and the how much.
By the way, the Source Power that we're using is actually headquartered in Syosset, New York on Long Island. So if you Google them and you find the outfit out of Syosset, that's the Source Power that we're going to be working with.
That's right.
So we've got some questions about solar panels, and that's the question that I hear the most often. If I already have solar panels.
Thanks, Bill, for that question. And if you already have solar panels, community choice aggregation works perfectly with the solar that you already have on your roof. So obviously you are probably drawing from the grid day and night. Your solar panels, unless you have some special battery storage system, your solar isn't creating any energy for you when it's dark, and you may still use power that's coming off the grid. Any of those electrons that you are purchasing that are coming off the grid will now be part of the community choice aggregation program. So those electrons will be this fixed rate, but it does not impact anything you currently have going on with your solar panels.
So there's another question. Are there plans to do CCA for natural gas?
Well, that's a great question. Not right now. There are no plans to do natural gas. You can, the order does allow for communities to consider using CCA for natural gas. Certainly from a climate perspective, cheap gas usually means people use more. So I am hoping to encourage communities to consider finding ways to incentivize a shift to reduce gas demand. And I know Jewel in particular, maybe Glenn wants to touch on this, may have some innovative strategies where we can couple gas demand reduction with aggregation. But until that is kind of a firm plan and commitment, no one discussed doing aggregation for gas at this time for this community.
Yeah, and actually, just as Sue said, it is an authority that the town has and can explore, though no New York State municipality, there's been, oh, how many? Probably about 75 or more communities in New York State that have operationalized a CCA. They've all so far to date been electricity CCAs, primarily because the prime driver behind implementing a CCA at the municipal level has been renewable, the sourcing of renewable energy. Not all the time, but certainly the communities that we're working with, that's been their priority. And gas price fixing has been less of a priority for the communities that certainly that we've worked with and that we've spoken with. There hasn't yet been a gas CCA in New York, though I do believe there are a couple of communities that are exploring that now. So we'll see, you know, how successful those programs are and potentially revisit that. Yeah, as Sue said, we haven't yet discussed that here in Brighton or regionally with any of the other communities that we've worked with.
Okay, so there's another question. Will the school district be taking advantage of this? I rather suspect that relates to meter classifications.
I could probably answer that only because I've talked to the school district previously, and I know that they already are a part of a consortium that delivers in what they feel is inexpensive electricity. So we have not had any additional conversations with them about community choice aggregation. We certainly would be open to having those conversations if they think it would be advantageous to them to do so.
It might be worthwhile, Sue, just to point out here that the automatic enrollment, the opt-out treatment that Sue spoke about earlier, that relates only to residential and small commercial customers. But utility customers of any service classification, that includes large commercial and industrial and municipal for that matter, larger users, can participate in the program. They're eligible to opt in. They simply won't be automatically enrolled. So for instance, if the school district changes its mind or finds that maybe their rate is no longer as attractive as it used to be, or they want to go towards 100% clean energy, for instance, they're certainly eligible to come into the program, as are all other utility customers in the town of Brighton.
Sue, there's a couple of questions about wind and solar. Maybe this is a good time to talk about the community solar program that Source Energy will also be making available to Brighton residents.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great idea, Bill. Thank you so much. So as Bill is indicating, Source Power is also going to be sending some marketing material if people would like to subscribe to a community solar field. And we highly recommend that you consider this and take advantage of it, because community solar can deliver savings between 5 to 10% off your entire electric part of your bill, both the supply and delivery. So it is a more substantial savings. And that is when you are basically subscribing to a field that already exists in the RG&E territory in a sunny location, and you're then seeing the credits or the savings that will show up on your utility bill. It will mean, however, that you would get an additional bill from the Source Power for those solar electrons. So just to be clear, the community solar piece is something, if people want to participate in, they would have to choose to enroll in. And there will be a flyer in that letter that's coming out. And there will be someone for you to speak to about that specific program. But that is something you would need to join. whereas the default community choice aggregation price is going to be automatic for just about all the residents and small businesses in our community.
On a related point, someone asked whether buying hydropower really does anything to accelerate the transition to renewable energy. I would say that it does so in a couple of ways. One, obviously, we are increasing demand right here in the town of Brighton, and hopefully other communities will do so, for renewable sources of energy. That will encourage renewable energy project developers to build more capacity, whether it's additional hydro capacity or whether it's solar or wind. And of course, a lot of that will vary with technology, and pricing is going to evolve over time. But it will increase the demand for renewable energy of all kinds. Conversely, it disincents the development and the purchase of non-renewable energy sources, because we're taking, in Brighton's case, we're going to be taking 14,000 or so homes out of the demand chain for non-renewable electricity. So yes, hydropower exists today, but the fact that we're using that, it really does stimulate additional demand to produce, generating sources for all renewable energy.
And if I may, Bill, just add to that, we take these existing renewable resources, primarily hydro and wind, somewhat for granted. Yes, they are operational, they're in the ground already today, but that is not a given going forward. Several of these, especially some of these legacy hydro plants, which are great old renewable resources that have been really valuable to the grid for decades, they're in big trouble in terms of keeping the doors open because they're not necessarily getting a price for their power that is enough to keep to make their ends meet, and B, reflects the renewable character of the power that they're producing in a way that provides them additional compensation. So we are seeing renewable resources in New York shutter the doors, and we're also seeing renewable resources in New York export, so to speak, their renewable power to markets like Massachusetts, where sometimes they can get a much higher price because those markets value the renewable content in a different way that results in a higher payment to the producer. So New York, we're on a path here to meet some very aggressive clean energy standards or targets, and we won't get there. Yes, of course, we need a whole lot of new renewable power, hydro, wind, solar, on the grid that doesn't exist today, but we certainly cannot afford to lose the resources that are already on the grid, and that we are at risk of, and without programs like this, which support existing resources as well as Bill said, incentivize the development of new resources.
So there's another question here. Will we still need to read our meters and give the readings to RG&E as we've been doing?
Yeah, that isn't going to change until RG&E changes how they read our meters. Right. And then
Another good question. Will this prevent or otherwise change RG&E's budget billing options?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you can do budget billing with this ESCO in place. Now, I do want to point out that when we transitioned in the town of Geneva to a CCA contract, what NYSEG did was the true up. Like at the end of every year, if you're on budget billing, at the end of every year, the utility looks at what you actually used and compares that to what you paid. And they call that your true up. And sometimes it means you overpaid them and they give you a rebate. And sometimes it means you owe them additionally, because of course they're basing your budget on last year's usage. So you may exceed that or be below it. And so at the end of each year, they usually true that up. When we switch to the CCA, we have to verify this with RG&E, but if they do the same thing as NYSEG, then they will do the true up just as the CCA program is being implemented, even if that's not when you usually see that true up. So just to be aware of that, but then you can get back into budget billing.
And I will say that RG&E has reached out, and we will be meeting with RG&E to facilitate the transition. And it is a good question, and it's something we're certainly going to want to discuss with them.
So I've just got one remaining open question. Says there are only a few local hydro stations near Rochester, and they are owned by RG&E. Which power stations would be purchasing power from?
So I don't know if Glenn knows specifically which power stations. We can ask Glenn, but there are dozens and dozens of hydropower facilities across New York State. And so maybe Glenn has a better sense if we know which specific hydropower facilities we're purchasing from, or do we just get the RECs from the hydropower?
Well, what we can say is that we will likely know that shortly. We can disclose some more specific information about that. What we can say is that all these facilities will be located inside of New York State, of course. And the other thing is that we can say is that it won't be, for instance, Niagara Falls and St. Lawrence, the very large hydro power stations in New York that are owned by essentially the state, by the New York Power Authority. So it will be the small and mid-sized hydro, privately owned hydro resources, of which they're scattered around the state. Like, as you said, not many in this area, largely in the upper Hudson, southern Adirondacks, as well as in the Catskills. And so that tends to be where the largest concentration of hydro facilities are here in New York. And our sourcing of the renewables will likely follow a similar geographic profile.
And as Glenn mentioned, these are New York sources, and this program is specifically New York sourced for a number of reasons. Obviously, we do want to promote New York businesses, but we also, by doing this New York renewable source, it qualifies us for certain NYSERDA grant programs. So that was an important consideration as well. I know we talked about how this will work for existing solar customers. Someone just wants to clarify, when those solar customers today send power back to the grid, they get a credit. How will that change, if at all, for a customer that's on the CCA?
Right, so that's a great question, Bill. So if you are a CCA customer and a community solar customer, you can take advantage of both programs, right? That maximizes your savings and it maximizes your commitment or influence in the renewable energy markets. And really, it doesn't interface with each other that much at all, right? So you're getting this default electric supply price per kilowatt hour, regardless of whether you have solar panels, regardless of if you're in a community solar program, that's your rate for coming off the grid. Then if you're in a community solar program, you will see the savings, the negative sign at the bottom of your bill, and I'll probably say something like CDG value stack credit. That's the fancy term for community solar. I know it's confusing. So I think that answers your question, Bill. But I also wanted to get back to your point about the grant funding, because that was really important that Brighton, because they've chosen to implement 100% New York State renewable program. This new round of grant funding will be closer to being able to access that, which is exciting. But also with the community solar participation, Brighton has an opportunity to get additional money for some more sustainability initiatives. And that's through basically per customer enrollment. So for every household that enrolls in the community solar program, Brighton will get $50 to go towards a sustainability initiative of their design. And that's because of the way the contract is negotiated with Jewel Assets and the solar developer, and Jewel's interest in it helping municipalities be incentivized to participate in these programs and to reward communities for their leadership and for their participation in sharing the information.
That's one of the reasons you're going to hear me talk about this being a win-win-win. This really is a win at a lot of different levels. I see the supervisor of the town of Canisius had reached out to me, and I'm guessing, Sue, that he may have, you may have already directly responded to his comment on the chat feature, and I appreciate that. But it's great, Supervisor Wester, to have reached out from Canisius, where they're served by National Grid. And so this really is a program that people across the state, as you had mentioned, it was piloted down in Westchester. We are among the first, and I'm certainly hoping and expecting that a lot of other communities will see the example that we're setting and hopefully be able to follow in our footsteps. And again, that really will promote the development of sustainable generation facilities in the state of New York, which will move the needle in a big way for the state as a whole, but also promote local, particularly upstate New York, job creation.
Great.
So I was just about to say there aren't any more questions there, but one more just come in. During the summer, solar panels produce more power than I use. The extra kilowatt hours are carried as a credit on the bill and are used in months when panels make less electricity than I use. Will this continue with this program?
And I assume with this program, you mean with a community solar program, or I'm not sure.
I think so.
Well, I think
yes.
it might be helpful to address it in both cases.
Yeah, okay. So Tom, if you have panels on your rooftop and you are carrying that credit over, that will remain the same. There's no reason for any of the rules for rooftop solar to change as a result of changing the default electric supply. Okay. If what you're asking is if you subscribe to a community solar program, it is true that the summer there will be more production, so savings will be larger than in the winter time. And you may also kind of develop that carryover for the credits. Ben, I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, I think you got it.
Okay.
Then we have a question from someone talking about a specific ESCO and doesn't recall that he signed a contract that was purchased a long time ago. Is the best approach for him to call his ESCO? What do you recommend for someone in that position? And I'm sure there are a number of people in that boat.
Yeah, definitely. It would be unlikely that the selection of Energy Cooperative America would have been a default. So at some point an action was taken.
Yeah.
And so you should call them and be sure you know what those terms are. And if you want to leave, make sure you know if there's a fee or not to leave.
Yeah.
And then you probably will need to inform RG&E if you choose to leave that ESCO.
Sue, do you mind if the ESCOs, they often make it very easy to sign up. So the idea that you may not remember a contract is not entirely surprising, but they are not permitted to sign you up without your explicit consent and a customer agreement of some kind. So some, as Sue was suggesting, there is some terms and conditions document that exists. It's unlikely after 13 years that you would have a termination fee associated with it, but it certainly doesn't hurt to check in and just give them a call.
And in fact, another viewer has indicated we clearly, and this is great because we do clearly have some people who are very familiar with the utility business, but this viewer indicates that there is no fee for Energy Co-op of America. So
good.
That's good news for you, Reggie.
Thanks, Jerry, for chiming in. Any
Well, as
other
you guys can see, that's all of the open questions we have.
Okay. Well, great. So there will be another opportunity, another Zoom meeting in November. I believe it's the 17th of November, but that will come in the mail in a letter to all of you.
Sue, do you want to just put your contact, maybe just put that last slide or something, and
Yeah,
just have the
sure.
contact back up briefly if in case people
Yeah.
want to copy that down? Oh, I guess it just has the well, that's, you can get to us through the website. Oh, there you go. Okay,
Here's our
good.
contact information. Yes, so the website info@monroecommunitypower.com works really well, and our telephone number.
And again, thanks to everybody that viewed tonight. We're out on Facebook, but we will be rebroadcasting this tape. It'll be on Monroe Community Power's webpage. We'll have a link to it on the town's webpage, and it'll be on various social media outlets. And our goal is to make sure that everybody in Brighton has the opportunity to learn more about this program. We really do. I am very excited about this. We think it's a great opportunity for all of us in Brighton at so many different levels. And we want to make sure that between now and the new year, when the program kicks in, that everybody gets their questions answered. Everybody learns as much as they can about community choice aggregation. And frankly, then everybody as a community gets to enjoy the benefits.
Thank you, Bill, for mentioning the social media. There is a Monroe Community Power Facebook page, as well as a Monroe Community Power Instagram. And we hope you will like those pages and follow it. We will plan to keep them updated as we move through this process. And thank you again, Bill, so much for the leadership that you brought to the process in particular, and also for Brighton's commitment to sustainability.
Thank you. Thank you. Kudos really both to you, Sue, and Roctricity, but also to Jewel. And we're looking forward to this. This is really a new day for us in Brighton, and we're excited to be working together.
It's great. Likewise, Sue and Bill, and just echo the sentiments of general enthusiasm and excitement to move to the next step, which we've been anticipating for quite a while, but so pleased with the result here, and look forward to continued partnership and collaboration with the town, specifically with Bill and the town board, and also with Roctricity. So thanks for everybody for showing up and for your great questions.
Okay.
We look forward to getting together again in November, and we may well have other opportunities. You're going to be hearing about it in the Brighton Connection magazine for those of you that get that. One question that wasn't asked, but I've been asked before. This is not just for the central part of Brighton. Community choice aggregation will be the program in all of Brighton, in East Brighton, in Central Brighton, in West Brighton. So again, it's townwide, and that's what gives it the power.
Okay, well, thank you all so much for joining us this evening, and do, reach out with any questions to info@monroecommunitypower.com or 244-0244. Thanks again.
Thank you, Allie, for interpreting. Thank you, Glenn and Sue. Have a great evening, everybody. Stay safe.
You too. Thanks, Allie.